She thought he was just another black beggar sitting on the floor. She had no idea she just picked a public fight with a millionaire tech genius who was about to destroy her entire career without even raising his voice. "Hey, you can't stay here bothering our customers." Diana Wilson's voice sliced through the Saturday afternoon buzz of the mall. She stood at the entrance of the most expensive electronics store in the city. Designer blazer, perfect hair, iPhone in hand already recording. On the floor in front of the store, leaning against the glass window, sat a black man in simple clothes, an old backpack beside him. He wasn't asking for money. He wasn't talking to anyone, just sitting there. But for Diana, he was perfect content. "Sir, I'm talking to you," she snapped, and angling her phone to capture both him and the store logo in the background. "You can't stay here. This is a luxury store. You're making families uncomfortable." People slowed down, watching. Some took out their own phones. The air shifted, that ugly, hungry silence before a public humiliation. The man looked up at her with calm eyes. "Ma'am," he said, voice clear and polite, "I'm just waiting." Diana laughed for the camera. "Waiting for what? An opportunity to steal something?" A few people snickered. "You should be looking for a shelter, not intimidating decent working people," she added, really projecting now. This wasn't about rules. This was about her moment. Behind her, through the glass, two salesmen watched. Inside the store, customers turned to see what was happening. Outside, a small crowd started to form. The man shifted slightly, then slowly got to his feet. "I understand your concern," he said, brushing the dust off his jeans. "But maybe you should check who's really disturbing who here." "Oh, is that a threat?" Diana said loudly, turning slightly so her camera captured the crowd's reaction. "You all heard that, right? That's exactly the kind of behavior we expect from—" She caught herself right before saying something she couldn't take back on video. A few people raised their eyebrows. "You can finish the sentence if you like," the man replied softly, a tiny smile at the corner of his lips. "I'm sure your company really wants that kind of content attached to its brand." For a second, she hesitated. It was the way he stood. Shoulders relaxed, posture straight. The way he spoke, measured, articulate, controlled. But just for a second, then the arrogance came back. "Last warning," she snapped, lifting the phone like a weapon. "Get out of here, or I'm calling the police." He nodded calmly, picked up his old backpack, and took a step back into the flow of people. Just before he disappeared into the crowd, he turned his head and said clearly, "Diana Wilson, store manager for 3 years. Salary about $4,200 a month. Married to Kevin Wilson. 2 kids at St. Andrew's Private School." He paused, letting her feel the weight of each word. Interesting how easy some information is to find when you know where to look. Diana's stomach dropped. "How do you—" But he was already gone. Only the crowd remained, and dozens of phones that had captured everything. If you're still watching this and your blood's already heating up, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what you would have done in James's place. Because what looks like just a manager yelling at a beggar is actually the opening scene of a brutal lesson in justice that's about to flip an entire system upside down. 2 hours later, Diana's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Queen Energy is so. Someone has to put these people in their place. Hire her to run the whole mall. She refreshed the numbers every few minutes, adrenaline pumping. In her head, she was already seeing herself as regional director. Finally, some recognition. Meanwhile, just a few streets away, the beggar. On the screen, revenue dashboards, growth graphs, contracts. His name wasn't Hey You. It was James Thompson, 34 years old, founder and CEO of TechFlow Solutions, one of the fastest growing e-commerce tech companies in the country. A private company valued at over $50 million. "Bro," said his partner, sliding into the seat across from him, "you need to see this." It was Alex Chun, co-founder, best friend since college, and the only person who knew James's whole story. He turned his phone around. There on the screen was Diana's video, already past 50,000 views, comments flooding in. James watched the whole thing from beginning to end. He saw her smirk, her finger in his face, the way she turned him into a prop for her performance. He saw the crowd, the executives who had turned him down months earlier, now laughing at him from the sidewalk. Alex waited for the explosion. It didn't come. James just closed the video, set the phone down, and took a slow breath. "She has no idea who you are," Alex said quietly. "Not yet," James replied, "but she's about to." Because Diana had done what arrogant people always do. She judged entirely by appearance. And she'd picked the wrong beggar. At 20, he built his first little software company from a borrowed laptop. At 28, he sold it for $2 million. At 34, he quietly controlled a tech empire that powered online sales for dozens of big chains. He had a modern apartment in Manhattan, a car most people only saw in magazines, and enough money to never worry about rent again. But he still remembered exactly how it felt to be treated like trash. And Mega Electronics, the store where Diana worked, one of the companies TechFlow had been in talks with for a $15 million partnership. Or had been. That same afternoon, Diana's phone rang with the call she'd been dreaming of. Diana, this is Richard Sterling, Regional Director. I need you in my office, now. This is it, she thought, smoothing down her blazer. Viral hero, corporate protector, promotion time. She walked into his office with her best professional smile. Sir, sit down, he said flatly, closing the door. That tone wasn't promotion tone. About this morning, he said. The incident with the man at the front. Sir, I was just protecting our clients from a disruptive element. Disruptive element, he repeated slowly. That element was James Thompson.
She blinked.
Who? James Thompson, Sterling repeated, leaning forward. CEO of TechFlow Solutions, a tech company we had a meeting scheduled with this week to sign a $15 million partnership. The room began to tilt. He canceled, Sterling continued, along with every upcoming negotiation with our entire group of stores. Sir, I didn't know who he was. He was dressed like what, Diana? Sterling snapped. Like some regular person who didn't fit your imaginary standard of acceptable customers? Do you think only people in designer clothes have money? He slid an envelope across the table. Do you know what this is? She opened it with trembling hands. Inside were printed screenshots of her old social media posts. Sarcastic comments about certain customers, ghetto people, and those who clearly don't belong in luxury spaces. She'd deleted them years ago. James hadn't. There were also internal complaint forms from customers, most of them black ignored by HR, and a picture freeze frame from today's video. Her, mid-sneer, finger in James's face. He did his homework, Sterling said coldly. He looked into our entire staff before the meeting. He knew who you were before you yelled at him. Sir, please, it was a misunderstanding. He tricked me. He pretended to be a human being, Sterling cut in, which should have been enough for you to treat him with basic respect. It wasn't. So now he's gone. And so are $15 million. Her job was gone. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. Because people like Diana rarely stop at "I messed up." They have to turn themselves into the victim. Within a few days, Diana was on Facebook in groups with names like "Workers Abused by the System," writing long posts about how a rich manipulator had disguised himself as homeless just to set her up and destroy an honest employee. He played poor to ruin my life, she typed angrily. He fooled everyone. This is fraud. This is harassment. This is an attack on working families. Her husband, Kevin, stared at her screen in disbelief. Diana, stop. You lost your job because you treated someone like garbage. Just move on. I won't move on, she snapped. He has money, power, lawyers. He thinks he can humiliate whoever he wants. I'm going to expose him. What she didn't know, every rant, every exposure thread, every desperate live she did, all being quietly saved by someone who knew exactly how to turn a bigot's meltdown into a legal weapon. Her name was Patricia Washington, civil rights attorney. 20 years of experience ripping discrimination apart in court. And she had just called James. Mr. Thompson, she said when they met, what Ms. Wilson did was ugly and stupid. But alone, that video isn't enough to destroy systems. It's just one racist manager. What are you really trying to do here? James slid a thick folder across her desk. This isn't the first time I've been turned down like this, he said. It's just the first time someone was dumb enough to film their prejudice in 4K. Inside the folder were emails, notes, patterns. Patricia flipped through everything, her eyes sharpening. This is not random, she muttered. Same wording, same coded language, same outcomes. You've basically mapped corporate racism in real time. James nodded. I want to go beyond a viral video. I want to prove a pattern, legally, publicly, systematically. How? She asked. A slow smile. By letting them reveal themselves. The plan was simple but lethal. James would approach some of those same companies again with TechFlow's proposal. Same product, same terms, same numbers. Only this time, Alex, a Korean-American guy who, let's be honest, those old whiteboards found much more comfortable would be introduced as the CEO. If they accepted the exact same proposal once they thought it was white lead, and then reacted differently when they learned the real owner was black, that wouldn't just be discrimination, that would be evidence. Totally legal, Patricia said, impressed, and absolutely devastating. Peterson and Associates was the first test. Last time James had walked into their building, he'd been given a polite smile, a fake coffee, and a rejection in under an hour. 40 minutes later, Marcus was practically glowing. "This is exactly what we need," he said, leaning back. "Finally, a company that gets sour, traditional business culture. You have my full support." Alex pressed stop on the tiny recorder hidden under his collar. "I'm glad to hear that," he said smoothly. "Before we sign, though, I'd like to introduce our founder and real CEO. "Real CEO?" Marcus frowned. "But I thought you—" "I represent the company," Alex replied. "But the person who built every line of code you just praised is waiting outside." The door opened. James walked in. Perfectly tailored suit. Briefcase. Calm eyes, silence. "Mr. Peterson," he said, extending a hand with that same composed tone he'd used with Diana. "Good to see you again. Last time we met, you said we weren't the right cultural fit. Has your culture changed in the past few months? Or just the skin tone of the person in front of you?" Peterson's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. That was when Patricia walked in. "Gentlemen," she said, holding up an ID. "I'm attorney Patricia Washington. I represent Mr. Thompson. I'd like to talk to you about your company's vendor selection patterns over the last 6 years." He'd walked into that meeting thinking he was the judge. He was actually the evidence. 3 days later, clips from that confrontation were everywhere. News channels, social media, podcasts. Headlines read things like, "CEO exposed for double standard. Tech founder traps racist executives using their own words." And in the midst of all that, Diana was at home, scrolling and fuming. "This is all a setup," she ranted in her Facebook group, Victims of James Thompson, which had all of 15 members. "He's manipulating companies, the media, lawyers. He's dangerous. He's attacking hardworking white people." Her post got angrier, more paranoid, more personal. She made long claims that James had bribed judges, paid off journalists, created fake cases to play the hero. She kept tagging his company, his name, his partners, all of it, archived. "Honestly, she's hanging herself," Patricia said, scrolling through the screenshots. "I couldn't build a better defamation case if I tried." "You're going to sue her?" Alex asked. James leaned back in his chair. "I'm not wasting all this on just one person," he said. "She's part of the story, but she's not the story." The story was the Thompson Report. 200 pages, 15 corporations, patterns, emails, statistics, taped meetings, internal memos. A legal bomb. Marcus Peterson resigned to focus on his family. 6 other CEOs followed. 17 companies announced overhauls of their vendor and hiring processes. The Department of Justice opened investigations into 40 corporations named in the report. And Diana? She got a letter. "Ms. Wilson," it read, "you are hereby notified that you are being sued for defamation, harassment, and reputational damage in the amount of $5 million. She almost dropped it. "$5 million?" she screamed. "For what?" Her latest proof post accusing James of fabricating racism for profit was attached as an exhibit. Lawyers she called read her messages, shook their heads, and said variations of, "You posted this publicly. For months, I'm not touching this." In court, Patricia laid it out cleanly. Even after being proven wrong, Ms. Wilson chose not to apologize or move on. She chose to wage a personal campaign of lies, attacking Mr. Thompson's character, business, and credibility. This isn't a mistake. It's an obsession. The judge read through page after page of Diana's posts. "Ms. Wilson," he said, "your own words are the strongest evidence against you. You will lose assets. Your wages will be garnished. And you are prohibited from mentioning Mr. Thompson publicly again." She left the courtroom to almost no cameras. No brave manager headlines this time.
Just silence.
Meanwhile, James was on the main stage at the biggest tech conference in the country, accepting the Transformational Leader of the Year award. "When Diana filmed me sitting on that sidewalk," he told the audience, "she thought she was capturing the humiliation of a beggar. What she actually did was accidentally give me the perfect public illustration of what millions of people go through quietly every day." 3,000 executives rose to their feet. Some of them were the same men who once sent him those not the right fit emails. Now they were applauding him. They weren't clapping for a victim. They were clapping for the man who had turned their system against itself. 6 months later, the Thompson Institute for Tech Justice opened its doors. Full scholarships, top-of-the-line training, mentorships, all for kids who came from places like James had. Neighborhoods nobody expects to produce CEOs. Many of the donors? Companies that had been named directly or indirectly in the Thompson Report, eager to repair their image by funding the change they once resisted. At the inauguration, James stood in front of 50 wide-eyed scholarship students. She sat in a cramped apartment she rented with 2 strangers, scrolling through her own name on Google. What she saw? Former manager sued for racist harassment. Ex-employee becomes cautionary tale about prejudice. What she didn't see anymore? Respect, trust, opportunity. Mom, please, her teenage daughter said one day, eyes wet. Stop blaming him. You filmed yourself. You posted it. You wouldn't stop. You did this. For the first time, Diana had no answer. Because sometimes the harshest sentence isn't prison. It's waking up every day inside the consequences of your own character. James Thompson went from that annoying guy on the floor to a symbol of a new way to fight discrimination. Not through screaming matches, but through strategy, documentation,
Patience.
surgical precision. He didn't just win against Diana. He made sure that the next time someone like her looked at a black man in simple clothes and thought nothing, there'd be a second voice in their head. What if I'm very, very wrong? And what if the whole world is watching? If this story of justice, strategy, and turning humiliation into power hit you even a little, do me a favor. Hit that like button so YouTube knows stories like this matter. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. And in the comments, tell me this. Have you ever been judged by your appearance? And what would you say to that person today if you had the chance?
Because remember,
You never really know who you're looking at. And underestimating the wrong person can be the most expensive mistake of your life.